Okay, today we're going to practice making a graph. Here we see two sets of quantitative data with numbers, the amount of rain and the lake size, the diameter and depth. Okay, so we're going to have the amount of rain is going to be your independent variable, the x-axis. The lake size, depth, and diameter is going to be your y-axis, and they're actually going to be both be on the y-axis. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to do is we're going to make a title for our graph. So you want to include all the variables you're working with. So for example, we would do lake size, depth, and diameter versus amount of rain. Okay. Then we're going to label our axes. So the x-axis, your independent variable, is going to be the amount of rain. So that's your label. We need a unit if provided. So here we had is measured in milliliters, so we need to include that. Put it in parentheses. And then we're going to do the same thing for the y-axis. So we're going to do lake size, depth, and diameter. Okay, they're both measured in decimeters, so we need to include that as well. There's your unit. Okay. Next thing we need to figure out is what to count by, also known as figuring out the scale. So for the x-axis, it's a little easier because we only have one set of data that we're concerned about. So we need to make sure when you're doing the scale, you do a little math equation to figure out what to count by. So you don't have to figure out, like, start with something and then erase it and try something else. So what you're going to do is we're going to take the biggest number and divide it by the number of lines or boxes that were given. Okay, so for example, for the amount of rain, our biggest number is 30. So we need to make sure that that 30 piece of data there, that range, can fit on these axes, on the axes. Okay, so for example, we're going to take 30 and divide it by the number of lines that we have. So the number of lines on the x-axis, we don't count that first one because this one usually will be 0 unless you're told otherwise. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 30 divided by 10 equals 3. Now, counting by threes, that's not going to be the easiest compared to some other numbers. Maybe not so easy to estimate data points by going by threes. So you always want to round up to something that's easy to count by, something that ends like in a 0, a 2, a 5. Go by ones. So in this case, we're going to round 3. The closest number that's closest to 3 that's really easy to count by, we're going to round that up to 5. Okay, so every line is going to be worth 5. Okay. Okay, so that means this will be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So whenever you scale, you do this little math equation to figure out what to count by. We're going to do the same thing on the y-axis. Now the y-axis, a little bit different. We have two sets of numbers. We're going to have two lines on this line graph, one for the depth and one for the diameter. So knowing that both of these pieces of data are going to be on the same axes, we have to look at both columns and see, of the two columns, where is our biggest number. So between the two columns, 860 is the largest number. So now we're going to use that for our scale for the y-axis. So same thing for the y-axis, the largest number divided by the number of lines. So on the y-axis, I'm going to do my little math over here. We have 860 divided by, let's see how many lines we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 860 divided by 10, that would be 86. Now you definitely don't want to count by 86s. That would be very hard. We want to round that up. You always round up, never down. Always round up. We're going to round up, so the number that's easiest to count by, that's closest to 86, that's bigger than it, would be 100. So that tells us that every line is now going to be worth 100. So we're going to count by hundreds as we go up here. So it's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, and then 1,000. Okay, what's left to do is to make the lines. I'll make my depth pink, and then I'll make the diameter orange. Okay. All right, so the depth, we're at so you'll end up with 10 to 100, 20, a little over, it's almost pretty much the same. So the depths we see kind of stayed the same pretty much throughout, no matter how much rain we had. Let's see the diameter. So at 0 amounts we had 450, which is kind of between the 400 and 500 right there. At 10 milliliters we had 590, which is close to the 600 line. At 20 milliliters we had 740, which is about a little under the halfway point, 700 and 800. And then at 30 we had 860, which again is kind of the halfway point between 800 and 900. Let's connect the dots. There you go. Okay.